Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, come a little closer and listen, not with your ears alone, but with the tender chambers of your heart. We gather today to ask a question that stirs both the soul and the sanctuary. Why did Jesus teach tithing if you don't have to tithe? Ah, what a question! It rolls off the tongue like honey and thunder, sweet and startling. It tugs at the roots of tradition, shakes the pillars of religion, and begs for clarity in a world of confusion. Let us walk together for a while, beloved, through the garden of understanding. Let us pause in the sunlight of Scripture and bend our ears toward the whisper of wisdom. For when Jesus spoke of tithing, he was not tallying coins. He was teaching the heart. You see, some folks would have you believe that the Savior of the world came merely to adjust rules, to hand out moral scorecards, to enforce the bookkeeping of heaven. But oh, I say no, and again I say no. Jesus came not to tighten the chains of religion, but to break them. He came not to count our offerings, but to weigh our intentions. He came not to make us fearful servants, but to shape us into faithful sons and daughters. And so, when he opened his mouth and spoke of tithing, he was not endorsing the legalism of the Pharisees. No, he was exposing their emptiness. He saw them standing proudly in their temples, tossing in their tents with loud jingles and louder egos, trying to impress a God who is not impressed by gold but moved by grace. They had the tithe in hand, but not the truth in heart. Jesus, that precious rose of Sharon, that gentle Lion of Judah, looked them in the eyes and said in Matthew 23:2-3, "You tithe your mint, your dill, your cumin, but you have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness." Can you imagine it? He wasn't dismissing their giving. He was demanding more, not more money, not more rituals, but more meaning, more heart, more truth behind the tithe. Now hear me, child. Anybody can write a check. Anybody can drop $1. But Jesus didn't come for what's easy. He came for what's eternal. And eternal things, lasting things, holy things, they are born in the heart, not in the purse. He used tithing like a lantern in a dark hallway. He said, "Let me show you where you've been faithful in form but faithless in function." He held up tithing like a mirror, and he asked, "Is this about obedience or optics? Is this about love or law?" My dear, he was teaching us a lesson that still sings in the sanctuary today. Giving without compassion is empty. Obedience without love is noise. Worship without sincerity is a clanging cymbal in the halls of heaven. What God desires is not your transaction, but your transformation. There was a widow with 2 copper coins. Remember her. She didn't have a tenth to her name. She had no abundance, no surplus, no wealth to flash in the temple. But she gave all she had.
And Jesus, oh yes, Jesus,
he pointed to her and said, she gave more than all the rest. Why? Because the heart behind her gift was rich in faith, full of trust, swollen with love. Now you tell me, is that not the lesson? Is that not the truth hidden in plain sight? That it is not the size of the tithe but the spirit in which it is given that matters to God. People often ask, did Jesus teach tithing? Yes, he did, but not as an accountant balances a ledger. No. He taught it like a gardener tends to a seed, with the hope that it would grow into something greater. He taught it to show us how small acts can reveal great faith, and how routines can be rungs in a ladder to righteousness, but only if they are climbed with clean hands and a pure heart. Let me say this to you with all the thunder and all the tenderness I possess. God does not need your money. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He laid the foundation of the earth with no offering plate passed around. But what he wants, what he longs for, is you, all of you, your laughter and your tears, your trembling and your trust, your yes even when it costs you, your no when the world tries to pull you astray. So when Jesus taught tithing, he was showing us the doorway, but he was not asking us to stay in the hallway. He was inviting us deeper, into faith that goes beyond formulas, into generosity that flows like a river, not like a rule, into worship that is wide and wild and full of wonder. And oh, how liberating that is. For once you understand that Jesus taught tithing to reach your heart, not your wallet, you are no longer a prisoner of fear. You are no longer trapped in the economy of guilt. You are a citizen of the kingdom of grace, where giving is not taxation, but testimony. A testimony that says, Lord, I trust you more than I trust this money. A testimony that says, my hands are open because my heart is yours. A testimony that says, I give, not because I have to, but because I'm free to. So let us not give like the Pharisees, who counted every leaf but lost sight of the tree. Let us give like Jesus taught, with hearts full of mercy, with spirits soaked in justice, with hands that serve because they are moved by love. Yes, Jesus taught tithing. But he was not teaching us how to give money. He was teaching us how to give ourselves. And that, my child, is a lesson worth learning again and again until we become it, until we live it, until we love like he loved, and still, like truth, like purpose, like grace, we write, my beloved, hear me now. There is something mighty sacred in the understanding that Jesus did not come to diminish the law, nor did he come to simply repeat it. He came to fulfill it, to complete it, to transcend it. And in that divine transcendence, he took the tithe, not to dismiss it, no, but to lift it higher. He took what was written in stone and wrote it again, this time on the heart. The tithe, dear one, was never the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of the conversation. You see, in the days of old, when the prophets cried out in wilderness places and priests labored in temple courts, the tithe was a requirement, a portion, a tenth. It was clear. It was commanded. And it served its purpose in a people learning how to live with a holy God among them. It was training. It was structure. It was the scaffolding for a deeper relationship. But then came Jesus, the carpenter's son with the words of eternity on his lips, and he began to build something that the tithe alone could never hold. Oh yes, he acknowledged it. Yes, he mentioned it. But he didn't say, stop there. He didn't say, that's enough. No, my dear, he called us beyond the 10%. He called us to a place of surrender, of spiritual maturity, of sacrificial love, because to him the Tithe was never a finish line. It was a launching point. Now I know some folks want to stay in the comfort of a rule. They want to know how much they must give, how often they must do it, so they can check it off and move along. But Jesus didn't come for comfort. He came for conversion. He didn't come to hand out to-do lists. He came to offer transformation. And beloved, transformation never stops at a tenth. When he walked the earth, he saw people who were tithing but still holding back their mercy, giving but withholding their compassion, showing up in the temple but shutting their hearts like tombs. And he said, you give your mint, your herbs, your coins, but where is your justice? Where is your faithfulness? Where is your love? He was saying, in essence, you've given your tenth. Now give your trust.
Give your truth. Give your time.
Give your tenderness. Give your total self. Oh, how mighty is the call beyond the tithe. And let me tell you something sacred. Jesus did not lower the standard. He raised it. He said, if someone asks for your coat, give them your cloak also. If someone asks you to walk a mile, go 2. He said, give to the one who asks of you. Now that ain't just 10%, baby. That's a generous spirit. That's a lifestyle of giving born not out of fear, but out of freedom. The tithe was a teacher, but grace is the graduation. The tithe taught discipline, but Jesus invites us into delight, into overflow, into giving that is not tethered to the law, but inspired by love. So when people say, do I still have to tithe? I look at them with all the tenderness I can muster and say, you don't have to. If your heart has learned to give more, because now you're not giving because it's written in Leviticus. You're giving because it's written in your life, in your story, in your testimony, in that moment when God pulled you out of despair and wrapped you in deliverance. Can you give out of that moment? Can you pour from that place of praise? Can you offer not just 10%, but your entire posture, your whole presence, your daily gratitude to the God who gave it all? You see, my child, Jesus didn't abolish the tithe. He completed it. He made it part of a greater whole, and in doing so, he beckoned us toward abundant giving, where the metric isn't the number on a check, but the motive of the soul. The early church, that mighty, trembling, spirit-filled gathering of believers, they didn't tithe like their ancestors. No, they sold their possessions and laid them at the apostles' feet. They gave until needs were met, until widows were fed, until orphans were clothed. They didn't ask, "What is required?" They asked, "What is love calling me to do?" That, beloved, is what Jesus meant. That's what he was building. A people not limited by law, but liberated by love. A people who give not with calculators in hand, but with hearts wide open. So no, you do not have to tithe in the way of the old covenant. But if you have tasted the goodness of God, if you have seen the faithfulness of his hand, if you have walked through the fire and come out not even smelling of smoke, then how can you not be moved to give more, to love more, to offer all? Jesus made the tithe a starting point. He invited us to rise higher, love deeper, give richer, not because we must, but because we may. And in that sacred space, between duty and delight, between discipline and devotion, we discover the true meaning of generosity, not as a requirement, but as a response to grace, a response to mercy, a response to the one who gave us everything. And still, beloved, we rise. Ah, my dear heart, come a little closer. Let me speak plainly and poetically to your soul. For there's a truth as ancient as the wind and as steady as the moon. And it is this: Jesus was never after your wallet. He was always after your heart. The coin is easy to give. The heart, now, that takes courage. That takes conviction. That takes a love that runs deeper than duty. You see, when Jesus walked among the fig trees and the fishermen, he was watching how people gave, not just what they gave. And he saw many bring their tithes and offerings with grand gestures and fine robes. But then came a widow, hunched and humble, clutching 2 copper coins, all that she had. She dropped them gently into the treasury, and he stopped everything. He didn't marvel at the rich. He didn't applaud the wealthy. He said, "This woman has given more than all the rest." Why? Because her giving was not measured in amount, but in adoration. She didn't give from abundance. She gave from trust. She gave from her need, from the deep well of her faith. That, beloved, is the heartbeat of Christ. That is what he came to teach us about tithing. Not the mere mathematics of giving, but the majesty of the motive. Because Jesus knew, and I know too, that it's easy to give when your barns are full. It's easy to share when your hands are already heavy with gold. But when your cupboards are bare, when your job is uncertain, when your soul is tired, and still you choose to give, oh, honey, that is holy. And don't let nobody tell you otherwise. Jesus taught about giving, yes, but he taught in stories, in moments, in glimpses of glory. He taught by lifting the poor, by dining with sinners, by washing the feet of the very ones who would betray him. He taught that giving is not about transaction. It's about transformation, not about obedience to a law carved in stone, but a response to a love engraved on the heart. He said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And that right there is the key. He wasn't asking, "Have you given your 10th?" He was asking, "Where is your treasure? Where is your heart? Who or what holds the reins of your desire?" Because the truth is, my darling, you can tithe to a church and still worship money. You can drop your coins in the plate and still hoard your compassion. You can give out of habit, but not out of hope. And Jesus came to free us from that kind of hollow giving. He came to call us to real generosity, the kind that stretches us, the kind that costs us, the kind that changes everything. And don't mistake his silence on percentages for absence of principle. No. Jesus wasn't lowering the standard. He was lifting the soul. He was calling us to give, not as Pharisees who boast in their giving, but as children who trust in their Father, as lovers of the light who give because they have been given much. You see, under the law, you gave because you had to. Under grace, you give because you want to. And what a difference that makes. It's like the difference between a storm cloud and a sunrise. One looms heavy with pressure, the other invites you gently to rise and to shine. That's what grace does. It was the heart. It whispers, "Come and see what happens when you give in love." And love, my dear, gives freely. Love gives generously. Love gives without counting the cost, because it knows the cost has already been paid on a cross, on a hill by a Savior who gave everything. So Jesus, sweet Jesus, wasn't trying to make us accountants of righteousness. He was making us ambassadors of abundance. He wanted us to live in such a way that our giving became a song, not a strain, a witness, not a weight, a joy, not a judgment. Let me tell you, I've seen it with my own eyes. Folk who had little but gave much. Folk who gave not just dollars, but dinners. Not just dimes, but their time. Their shoulders to cry on, their ears to listen. That, my love, is tithing of the Spirit. That is giving in the name of Christ. So when we ask, why did Jesus teach tithing if we don't have to tithe? We must hear his voice echo through the ages, saying, I taught it so you could go beyond it, so you could live a life where generosity is not an obligation. It's a way of breathing. It's a way of blessing. It's a way of being. Don't you ever limit God's lessons to a ledger. Don't shrink his calling to a coin. Let your giving be a reflection of your freedom, not your fear. Give as one who knows that every breath is borrowed. Every gift is grace, and every chance to give is a moment to mirror the heart of God. For in the end, Jesus wasn't trying to raise fundraisers. He was raising followers, followers who walk in love, followers who serve with joy, followers who give not from guilt, but from glory. And you, yes, you, are one of them. Now go and let your giving be your testimony. There is a sacred rhythm in the universe, my dear. A hush between the stars, a harmony in the turning of the earth. And deep within that rhythm, there is a lesson Jesus came to teach us. Not of legalism, not of burdensome rules, but of something far more precious. He came to illuminate the heart, to draw us back from performance and into presence, from empty ritual into holy relationship. Tithing, you see, had long been part of the law. It was etched in stone, wrapped in parchment, handed down from prophet to prophet. It was duty, yes, righteous in its time, but bound in the cords of requirement. The people brought their tenth as they were told. It was measured, it was calculated, but too often it was without meaning. Too often it became a mechanical act, a gesture without grace. Then came Jesus, the Word made flesh, stepping into the dust of human living, into the clutter of tradition and the noise of expectation. And when he spoke of giving, he did not simply say, "Bring your tithe." No, he went deeper. He spoke of generosity as a matter of the heart, not just the hand. He didn't abolish the tithe, but he transcended it, because Jesus saw what law could not see. He saw the woman who gave from her lack, the tax collector who gave from his repentance, the rich young ruler who could not give at all. He saw not the money but the motive, not the tenth but the truth. And that truth was this: God never truly needed our 10%. God wanted all of us. Our hearts, our minds, our love, our faith. Now hear me carefully, child. This is not to say that tithing is wrong. Oh no, there is honor in giving and discipline in obedience. But when the gift becomes a goal, When the offering becomes a scorecard, we've missed the Master's heart. Jesus didn't teach us to give because we must. He taught us to give because we can. Because it is in us to give. Because the Creator who breathed life into our lungs is generous. And if we are to be like Him, then we too must walk in that generosity. Not from compulsion, but from compassion. You see, the Old Testament taught people to tithe as a commandment. But Jesus came to awaken the soul. He came to raise a standard not of law, but of love. A love that gives not just its money, but its mercy. A love that feeds the hungry, clothes the naked, visits the prisoner, and sees the unseen. That is a higher calling. That is a deeper giving. And oh, how beautiful it is when we give from that place. Not because we're afraid of a curse. Not because we're afraid we'll be punished if we don't. But because we understand we have already been blessed. Already been lifted. Already been redeemed. Let me tell you something, Trug. Jesus gave His all. He gave His breath, His bloody, His beauty. He gave without reserve, without condition, without calculation. And when He calls us to give, He is not asking for our leftovers. He is asking for our trust. He is inviting us to enter into a divine exchange where we release what is temporal and receive what is eternal. So if you still tithe, let it be from joy, not judgment. Let it be from freedom, not fear. Let your offering be like incense, fragrant, sincere, and rising from a heart that knows it is deeply loved. And if you do not tithe in the traditional sense, do not think for a moment that you are lesser. For there are many ways to give. Some give in kindness, some in time, some in prayer, some in presence, some in tears shared with a hurting soul. God sees it all. Heaven counts differently than man. Heaven measures not in coins, but in compassion. Remember when Jesus said, "If you bring your gift to the altar and remember your brother has something against you, leave your gift. Go and be reconciled first." That, my dear, is the essence of what He came to teach. The heart matters more than the habit. Reconciliation matters more than ritual. So let us not become caught up in the debate, tithe or don't tithe. That is not the question. The question is this: are you giving from a place of love? Are you living with open hands and an open heart? Are you letting your blessings become a blessing to others? If you are, then you are walking in the teaching of Christ. Then you are honoring not just the letter of the law, but the spirit behind it. And that spirit is generous. That spirit is kind. That spirit gives not 10%, but everything. Willingly, joyfully, and abundantly. So go ahead and give, child. Give without fear. Give without pride. Give because you want to, not because you have to. And let your life be the offering. Let your love be the tithe. Let your light be poured out like oil on the altar of a world that is desperate for grace. For in the end, it is not the tenth that proves your devotion. It is the depth of your love. And that, sweet one, is the kind of giving that shakes heaven. When you look at the life of Jesus, you see not just a man, not just a prophet or a teacher. No, you see the very embodiment of divine generosity. You see a life poured out like oil upon the earth, a spirit that gave until there was nothing left to give but love, and even then He gave that too. Jesus was generosity wrapped in skin, compassion walking with calloused feet, a grace stretching out arms wide enough to hold a hurting world. Now, when He spoke of giving, it wasn't a financial seminar. It wasn't a 3-point lesson on budget and obligation. No, child. It was a heart cry, a call to awaken what's been sleeping in our souls. He wasn't after your money. He was after your mirror. He wanted you to see in yourself what He sees. And what He sees is this: you were made in the image of a generous God. A God who gave His breath, who gave His Son, who gives His Spirit still. Jesus taught giving not as transaction, but as transformation, He said. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Now, that's not just a verse to memorize. It's a truth to live. Because when you give, truly give. Something in you breaks open. Something in you blooms. You begin to understand that the real treasure isn't what you keep, it's what you release. And he didn't just teach it. He lived it. He gave to the poor. He fed the hungry. He healed the broken. He took time with the outcast, the sinner, the unseen. He gave even when it wasn't convenient. Gave even when it cost him everything. From the widow's mite to the perfume poured on his feet. From the loaves and fishes to the blood and water that flowed at Calvary. Jesus lived a life of holy, radical, unstoppable giving. Now let me say this plain tithing, as practiced under the law, was a measure 10%, simple math. But Jesus came and tore the veil. He came and shattered the calculator. He came and said, give everything, not just your coins, your care, not just your income, your intentions. He was calling us into deeper waters, where giving becomes not something we do, but something we are. You don't need a spreadsheet to be generous. You need a surrendered heart. And that's what Jesus modeled. Not a tithe, but a total offering, a life emptied in service of love. When he watched the widow drop 2 coins into the temple box, he didn't say, she met the 10%. He said, she gave more than all the rest. Why? Because she gave from her heart, not her excess. So many people get tangled up trying to calculate their way into holiness. But God isn't watching your math. He's watching your motive. He's not asking, did they give enough? He's asking, did they give with love, with joy, with sacrifice? That's the kind of giving that mirrors Christ. And oh, beloved, when we mirror Christ, we become light in dark places, salt in tasteless corners. We become the answer to someone's prayer, the blessing someone didn't even know how to ask for. You don't need to be rich to give like Jesus. You just need to be willing to share your time, willing to offer your presence, willing to speak a kind word when the world is cold, willing to forgive when others hold grudges, willing to see people, really see them, when the rest of the world looks away. Giving is not confined to money. No, it is as wide as heaven and as deep as mercy. You give when you call your grandmother just to say you love her. You give when you pack a sandwich for someone on the corner. You give when you pray for the friend who betrayed you. You give when you listen, when you show up, when you stay. That's what Jesus taught, and that's what he lived. So the next time someone tells you that Jesus only preached tithing, you tell them he embodied giving. He didn't walk the earth with a ledger in hand. He walked it with a heart full of heaven. He didn't measure generosity in percentages. He measured it in passion. He said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He knew that what we give to shows what we love, and what we withhold from reveals what we fear. So give, child. Give with boldness. Give with laughter. Give with tears if you must. But give, not because you have to. Not because some man in a pulpit told you the curse of Malachi would fall on your house. No, give because your soul has been set free. Give because your God gave first. You are not bound by law. You are invited by love. And love gives. Freely, fully, faithfully. In that giving, you are not just doing what Jesus said. You are becoming who Jesus is.